Before we get into the forgotten fieldcraft of the men who managed to rest on ice-bitten earth, just give me 1 minute to set the scene the way I would if we were standing side by side in a museum archive. Soldiers in the Second World War didn't get the luxury of waiting for perfect conditions. And, well, sleep wasn't a comfort. It was survival. The difference between holding a line and collapsing under hypothermia often came down to techniques passed quietly from veteran to recruit. These were not theoretical ideas. They were field-proven methods men used under fire, in sub-zero forests, and in mountains where the ground itself seemed to steal the life out of them. And before we continue, do make sure you're subscribed to the Legacy of Survival channel so you never miss any of these deep dive guides we produce for serious historians and survival-minded viewers. When we talk about sleeping on frozen ground during the Second World War, we aren't looking at romanticized stories. We're studying the practical systems that kept real people alive. Systems modern survivalists can still use, whether they're camping in winter, training outdoors, or documenting historical living conditions. In this guide, we'll break down 9 specific techniques soldiers use from the Eastern Front to the Alps to the Ardennes, along with practical ways anyone today could apply the same principles. Soldiers first created insulation under their bodies because frozen ground steals heat faster than icy air. The first lesson every veteran knew was this: you could wrap yourself in the warmest coat ever issued, but if you slept directly on the earth, you were done. German Gebirgsjäger troops stacked fir branches in thick layers, while Soviet soldiers scraped snow into a mound, stomped it firm, and then carved out a raised sleeping platform on top of it. You know, snow actually has air pockets and, well, it insulates surprisingly well when it's compressed. The principle is really quite simple. Just put something, honestly anything, between you and the ground. These days, a survivalist might gather dry grass evergreen branches, cardboard, or even make a compacted snowbed to stay warm. The key here is height. Even as little as 4 centimeters of insulation can make a dramatic difference in how much heat you retain. They reuse clothing strategically, rather than just wearing every layer to bed. During the war, soldiers quickly learned that putting on every piece of clothing at once was actually a mistake. You needed dry fabric set aside, specifically for sleeping. In fact, many Red Army troops kept a pair of dry footcloths tucked away in their tunic just for the night, even during those grueling forced marches. You know, British and American infantry sometimes stuffed spare shirts or coats under their bodies to add insulation rather than wearing those layers on top. In modern conditions, the application is actually quite simple. Dedicate a dry base layer for sleeping, and use spare clothing to pad the ground rather than adding more on top of you. This preserves warmth far more effectively, honestly. They slept in pairs or in tight groups when the temperature became lethal. Japanese and Soviet soldiers used this method extensively in Manchuria and Siberia. It's not glamorous, and it wasn't optional. Shared body heat was, you know, a battlefield necessity. Soldiers would lay back to back to reduce heat loss, and they rotated positions throughout the night. Even today, hunters and mountaineers still use this technique in survival situations. In non-emergency conditions, even something like 2 sleeping bags zipped together accomplishes the same principle. The physics hasn't changed since the 1940s. Surface area exposure kills warmth, but shared volume, well, it preserves it. They used improvised windbreaks even when they couldn't build fires. WWII soldiers were taught that frozen nights weren't truly dangerous until the wind picked up. In the Ardennes, American troops stacked snow walls, ration crates, or even their own packs around the sleeping area to block airflow. Finnish soldiers cut small trenches so their bodies sat below the wind line. This is something you can recreate easily today. Stack logs, gear, snow, or even use a tarp tied low to the ground. Eliminating direct wind contact often doubles perceived warmth. They pre-warmed their sleeping area with body heat before settling in. This is a rarely mentioned trick. Soviet and German veterans both wrote about lying on their future sleeping spot for several minutes while still fully dressed and moving gear around. This compressed the snow or branches, removed cold air pockets, and let their body heat start the warming cycle. Only after that did they remove outer layers and settle in. You can apply this during winter camping. Prepare your sleeping platform early, lie on it briefly with all your layers on, then return after tasks are done. Your heat will have already taken the edge off the cold. They used ration tins, hot stones, or heated canteen water as crude warmers. The trick wasn't complicated. They heated something safely, wrapped it in cloth, and put it near their core or between their thighs. German infantry sometimes placed warmed rocks at the feet. British troops heated water in their canteens when a small smokeless stove was available. In a modern context, boiling water and sealing it in a metal bottle, then wrapping it with fabric, performs the same job. The focus is always on warming blood flow areas, not extremities. They learned to sleep in short cycles instead of long stretches. Many armies, especially on the Eastern Front, trained men to rest in bursts. When temperatures were brutal, longer sleep meant deeper drops in body temperature. Short sleep cycles kept metabolism more active. This is still used by polar researchers and winter survivalists. If you ever find yourself resting on frozen ground, set intentional rest intervals rather than chasing long, uninterrupted hours. They protected their breath moisture because exhalation freezes clothing solid. A common mistake was breathing into blankets or coats. Soldiers quickly learned that moisture froze layers stiff by morning. Instead, many wrapped only their lower face and let their breath vent away. Some used spare fabric as a frost guard, held loosely, not pressed against the mouth. Modern equivalent. Avoid letting warm breath saturate your sleep gear. Ventilation preserves your insulating layers. They prepared for morning rewarming before going to sleep. This final hack determined morale and survival. Soldiers kept dry socks inside their shirt to warm them overnight, positioned gloves under the armpits, and placed boots upside down to prevent freezing solid. A modern outdoor enthusiast can do the same. Sleep with tomorrow's socks against your torso and keep essential gear inside your sleeping system to, prevent ice build-up. Preparing the next morning's warmth before sleeping, well, it prevents a rude awakening when boots or gloves freeze. These 9 World War II soldier sleeping hacks were built on necessity, not theory, and they remain fully applicable to anyone studying historical fieldcraft or practicing winter survival today. If you want more deep, research-driven guides like this, make sure you subscribe to Legacy of Survival and share this video with fellow historians and survival enthusiasts who appreciate the real methods used by the men who lived through some of the harshest conditions in modern history.